Hello, ladies and... Can you call people ladies and gentlemen anymore? That's a serious... That's not
cancelled.
making it into
Cancelled.
the final
Go fuck
thing.
yourself. You're cancelled.
Like,
I am offended.
Okay, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Super Show podcast, episode number 154? Which...
Correct.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess for those of you who are good at maths, that means you'll notice that we're hurtling quickly towards 3 whole years of podcasting. And in anticipation of hitting such a milestone, why not assemble the Avengers, some might say, the Marvel's Avengers of video game voices, video game personalities, the gangster, the killer, the dope dealer, who's who, that's for you to decide. I'm here, Chris is here, Jonesy's here, and we are going to join forces to chat video games, aren't we, lads?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Full house as well, fellas. 2 for 2. We're winning in 2023. Apparently.
Yeah.
Some may
I would
say.
say it's like a begin the year as you mean to go on kind of thing, but let's see how we look next week, and the week after, and, let's feel this thing out as we go, right?
Hey, I'm just here to take it easy. Take it easy.
If 2020 taught me anything, it was expect the unexpected, so never make any long-term plans.
That's a good idea. And if you're listening to this, I recommend you don't make any short-term plans because the next hour, hour and a half, 2 hours of your life are completely taken care of, and it's by us because you're already listening and or watching to the only video game or video game adjacent product you need in your life, whether you are watching it on YouTube, whether you are listening to it on audio podcasting platforms such as Spotify, iTunes, and Google Podcasts. I always remix iTunes there. I choose you, like Ralph Wiggum.
There's a picture of a train.
Yeah,
exactly. And you can also catch up with us on social media. The handle on Twitter is @SuperShowPod. We sometimes check in on what's going on over there. Check our DMs, see if anyone has tagged us in any hot memes. Chris is usually responsible for those kind of shenanigans, so don't be afraid to reach out and try and give him a laugh, make him chuckle in the middle of his unbelievably boring work day. Have we had anything lately, Chris?
No, my life continues to be bleak because no one's been sending us messages. So
do you know
thanks
what?
for that.
I'm going to send a DM to @SuperShowPod tomorrow morning, and as we've discussed before on this very podcast, I think there's nothing more fitting than a dick pic. So, will it be hard? Will it be soft? Let me know what you think I'm going to send in the comments down below.
Nah, only chubs accepted.
I'm going to try and get in the mind of Chris, and I'm going to try and send him an Elden Ring based meme that he will enjoy.
Oh,
and I'm gonna attempt to do that tomorrow. I think
that's a nice idea.
I like that. That's thank you, Jonesy. I appreciate that. That's nice.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I haven't done it yet, but you're welcome.
It's a thoughtful gesture, just as thoughtful as we were when we gave the gift of this podcast to the fine folks at Paisley Radio so that they can rebroadcast it for your listening enjoyment. The link for that is paisleyradio.com. It's broadcast out at Thursdays at 10 p.m. It's repeated on Mondays at 10 p.m. So if you ever fancy listening to this fine show, this fine piece of programming in a slightly different format, then once again, paisleyradio.com. Get some digital radio in your life.
Can I make a request? I would love it if a Paisley Radio person tweeted us and just said hello, because I would love to. I don't know if anyone listens to it on Paisley Radio, but it'd be nice. So tweet us @SuperShowPod. Just say a little. It doesn't have to be DMs. It could just be on the open Twitter and just say sup.
Oh yeah, sup. So we know that obviously Paisley Radio is Scottish, but from what I understand, they've got quite a large American audience. And I always like to imagine, close my eyes and picture the scenario of an ice road trucker listening to us while he's traversing the crickety crack ice. I like it. That's just how I like to kind of think that we appeal to, the salt of the earth, the masses.
And if not an ice road trucker, then like at second best, we will settle for a Euro Truck Simulator 2 player, someone who just goes on extended 8 to 12 hour long play sessions and needs us in his or her life as they virtually truck across not quite ice, but the treacherous roads of mainland Europe. Which
keep on trucking. Hey.
Yeah, sometimes you have to remember which side of the road to drive on. It's crazy. Do you know what else is crazy?
Foxes.
Did you say boxes?
Foxes.
Oh,
Foxes are pretty crazy.
Actually, I'll accept that as an answer. Yes.
Yeah.
As someone who
Sometimes it
regularly
sounds like
listens-
tramps are like fighting outside of my window, but it's just foxes. It's weird.
Honestly, like if you thought humans like created a very fine line between fighting and fucking, you like foxes. You've got another thing coming when you start listening to their nighttime adventures. It's ridiculous.
Yes, it is. It is absolutely mental.
Go on, Jamie.
Don't think
Give
it
us
goes
a
on by
give us a drop some bars as a fox. Like, what do they sound like when they
Oh no, I'm not
boning
gonna,
slash
I'm not
fighting?
gonna go
Come
there.
on,
I'm
come
not
on,
going to go
man.
there. No,
You can
because it's
do
some
it.
of the most high pitched, like disturbing yelping. Like that was the part. Do you remember the iconic viral hit? What does the fox say?
Yes.
Ring a
That
ding
was-
ding
that
ding
was-
ding ding ding.
Yeah, that was always like the missing piece of the puzzle. Is actually foxes sound very interesting, and that they're not exploring that territory at all. That's why that was a 4 out of 10 track.
I'm pretty sure Chris just tore us off a bit of the frog, not what does the fox say?
Yeah,
With his
in,
ding, ding, ding,
in South
ding,
Africa,
ding,
they had a
ding,
rip-off
ding.
called the Crazy Fox.
I think in the song doesn't the fox what do you call it? It's like the jazz thing. It does like a whibbidab doo bum, a skibbidab doo dum.
No, I'm telling you,
it does. The fox
He
does.
does a ring a ding ding thing. I promise you.
He doesn't. There's no ring a ding dings.
He does.
He's like a scat. He's like a scat guy.
Mate,
he's like a jazz scat guy.
We will wait and listen in silence while you just go and fucking Google that.
I listen to it regularly because my kids are obsessed with it, and I'm telling you, the fox he loves a bit of scat because the whole thing is like,
what?
does it say this? Does it say that? But then the fox comes along and starts scatting in the woods. And going,
Oh,
skibidab
I think you're listening to like a bootleg, bro. Like,
No,
I
I
know.
think you're both. I think you're both
Everyone in
right.
the comments is now laying into Chris and being like, "What are you talking about? You're talking about the crazy
all
frog."
5 people that comment on us just to tell us, like, "Hey guys, full
It's
house
the
today.
scat.
Good to see
It's
you.
a scat
have
fox.
a good time."
100%.
Scat fox. I mean, foxes do like scat.
Fox.
Don't mind a bit of scat, do you?
Yeah.
I don't. Speaking of scat, there's a couple of video games coming out in the next couple of weeks that are drawing various amounts of attention. It's funny, when we were chatting last week, I was talking optimistically about starting Elden Ring soon because I thought I wouldn't have anything to play for, like, I don't know, at least the rest of January. And I looked at the schedule and realised how wrong I was. Obviously, Dead Space is around the corner. People are looking forward to that. One game, though, that is has so far, at least based on demos and previews, been met with a slightly more mixed reception is Forspoken, the upcoming, I guess you'd call it, open world action adventure game set in a fantastical land where you play as a once citizen of, is it New York or is it just a New York adjacent city, who gets whisked up into a magical world, and thanks to a weird like talking bracelet thing, figures out that they can use and harness these magical abilities to fight what I presume are local wildlife that were just minding their own business before you came along and started tearing shit up.
As it happens, yeah.
Yeah, when we played the demo a couple of weeks ago, Jonesy, I think it was it you played it as well, right?
I did, yeah.
We weren't entirely sure how we felt about it, and I think even the feeling at the time was we maybe needed to see a little bit more of the finished product and how the chunk of the game that we played fed into the bigger picture. I'm sure, in fact, that that's a sentiment that a lot of reviewers and critics and personalities out there on the internet can get behind. Unfortunately, some of those individuals may not be able to share that information because it turns out that there is going to be limited access to review copies for certain individuals, for certain personalities, even for certain websites and publications. And it's not entirely clear what that's based off and who's going to be getting review copies and who isn't, and why. Some outlets that we know for sure are not going to get, or as of report at the time of recording, have not yet received review codes, include SkillUp, the YouTuber that a lot of people look to for, I think, popular and unbiased opinions. There's also Windows Central. You may not know them, but they're like them, and a lot of their writers are very active on Twitter. I'm sure you've come across some of their journalists in the past. BGC, The Escapist, similar stories over there. And I believe you were saying, Jonesy, that SkillUp tweeted that he knew of at least 7 outlets that had talked about, at least in private, not having access to review copies of the game.
Yes, it gets a bit. This is what I was trying to find confirmation, but I saw a couple of weird sort of contrasting stories about this. So SkillUp obviously didn't receive a code and said, yeah, he's been privately told 7 other big outlets didn't get codes. I then there was a rumor that Square Enix had said the reason that the people hadn't got codes was actually like a mistake, and that they should have received codes, and it was just like an error.
Right.
But I can't find any confirmation of that, and also it's weird because you'd think if that's the error, just send them a damn code like the next day.
Yes,
or,
literally a fucking email, right? And then that would be something that SkillUp would like then tweet out like, oh, actually, yeah, there was a mistake and I did get a code. But to my knowledge, he hasn't tweeted anything. So,
no.
So does that lead you guys to believe that perhaps this is a less of a mistake as it's being made out to be, and is perhaps part of a slightly more structured or planned attempt to perhaps maybe, and this is, complete, speculation at best, part of a plan to ensure that review copies don't get in the hands of outlets or individuals who may give this game less favorable reviews? Which other games and studios and publishers have been accused of in the past.
Yeah, but they released a demo. This is the head scratcher. Sometimes when they've got something to hide, okay, which usually results in them not handing out a key to reviewers, and you're like, oh, okay, that's a bit concerning. But there's a fucking demo that anyone could play and anyone could get a sense of.
I don't think that means anything. Like I've learned, unfortunately, that there's a few games that they release a demo of, and we've had this before. Like, I think I've had the thoughts, and I think like I'm specifically thinking about like Marvel Avengers. You played that demo, and I was like, oh, but I bet they'll change this and they'll fix that and fix this, and then we have had the conversation, which is no, they won't. They don't have time. They've only got months out. This is got to be a relatively recent build, and so the fact that they put a demo out, I don't think means that much, because you can hide behind it's only a small fraction of the game. You're just getting a taste.
Yeah,
but
all I'm saying is it just feels like it muddies the water. Like
maybe I get what you mean. Like, why would you put a demo out if you were that worried about it? But then a lot of games I feel do.
Yeah, because you got to remember as well. It wasn't a beta. It wasn't a network test. It was like, here's a fucking demo. And the point of the demo is to play the game, to understand what it's all about, and you can make up your own mind. And usually when companies or game devs do that, and publishers, they throw their weight behind their product. They're like, no, we believe in this, and here you go. Like maybe we need to try and convince people to just kind of just try it because we stand by our product. And this is kind of like muddying the water. So maybe it does mean that it does have something to do with like a fuck up on sending out the codes. But at the same time, it's just a fucking email. Like, just fucking do it if that is the case. I don't know. It's a bizarre one to me.
The one I'm sort of tempted by is the idea that, and some people have thrown this out there, is that the people who didn't get review codes may well have been people that didn't respond that favorably to the demo, or who were sharing things to do with the leak, the hour of gameplay that got leaked. And so is there, is it that it's almost like reciprocation for that, which is, I don't like the idea of that. I don't like the idea of like a punitive, we're not sending you a code because you didn't give our game favorable, like, look after the demo.
Can I give you my hot take on that, which isn't very hot at all, and it should be everyone's take? If that is the case, then fuck Square Enix. Like, don't do that then. Like, don't offer any codes if that's the case. You shouldn't be able to gatekeep this from anyone's opinion. Fuck you. Like, this is 2023. Right. We're not in that game anymore. Like, that shouldn't be happening. And if you think that happens, or if it's even an individual, I don't mind fucking calling out that individual, tying them up and stringing them in the street for people to fucking pelt their shit at and rotten tomatoes and teabag them and shit. Like, that shit needs to stop. And it should have stopped a long time ago. And if that is the case, then fuck Square Enix. Simple.
Yeah. No, I get that. Like, there have been weird cases in the past where, blacklisting has been a thing, whether the publication has known about it or not. Like, I think Kotaku versus Bethesda was a big one, like, many years ago in the pre-Microsoft Bethesda era, and that was to do with Kotaku reporting and re-reporting on, like, leaks and leaked information, stuff like that. And Bethesda were just like, we're just not going to give you anything anymore. Then Bethesda, ironically, changed their own review policy, right? So then they started only giving out review copies, like, was it 24 hours before the game came out? But I think, Chris, you kind of wandered into the territory where my head was at, which is, look, we've heard about games that have review embargoes that drop when the game comes out, so a consumer can't prepare themselves. We've heard about game publishers or studios sending out copies 2 days before, and the game's 300 hours long, and reviewers can't possibly hope to inform consumers in time for launch day, and people who are weighing up pre-ordering and so on and so forth. But this is neither of those cases. This is a game that has been in some people's hands for around a week. The review embargo, I believe, is tomorrow, which is Monday at the time of recording, which would be the day before release, which isn't that much notice, but it's notice enough. You can cancel a pre-order, with that much notice if you want to. And the key thing is, like you said, it's select publications, it's select outlets, it's select individuals. I'm sure there's going to be big spreads on IGN and GameSpot tomorrow afternoon or whenever it is the reviews go live. So when you pick certain individuals out and say, actually, you're not going to get access to this for one reason or other, it does, whether there is or not, it does make it look like there's some kind of agenda at hand, whether that's punishment for something, as you guys both talked about, or whether it's to avoid negative press.
It just
You're
seems like
inviting
playing
that speculation.
Yeah, it seems like they're playing favorites. Like, oh, well, we'll know that IGN will give us a fucking good score because they're IGN and they're a business more often than they are actual just reviewers. So fucking bonus, and that's bullshit. Like, that shouldn't be the case at all. And the only person that loses is the consumer, and that's annoying.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that? Do you think there'll be anything to tell from the outlets who don't have reviews tomorrow? So will you be interested to see who doesn't have them, and whether that will give you an insight into what the reasoning behind it was?
That's tough, man.
Yeah, because based on the ones we do know about by name, I don't think there's necessarily a common thread in terms of like, oh, these are all outlets that we know are tougher or stricter on games than others, or have been more outspoken in the past, or have been anti-Square Enix in the past, or anything like that. So I don't know if
it's why it's a bit weird, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like I'm not sure we'll get the reviews tomorrow and see like a through line between the publications that are missing when the review embargo drops. I think it's going to look a bit more scattershot than that. But it probably, it might be quiet, and it might take the full week for, the full gamut of reviewers to have let their opinions loose on the internet, which is, not great if you're excited for the game.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what.
Sorry, go on, Chancy.
Oh no, I was going to say, I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be surprised at, and I'm not saying this is what Square have done with this, but I wouldn't be surprised that in future, given the number of people who want to be reviewers, who want to be involved in the games industry, I wouldn't be surprised if, rather than not sending out review codes like in general, you started, like, big companies started to sort of hand select, a whole group of reviewers that they wanted to send stuff to, just to sort of like bump up their Metacritic scores, their like preview scores before a game comes out, because they know, oh, these people are into this, or these people are small enough that they'll be so happy of getting a review copy that they'll be a little bit more favorable. I'm surprised that doesn't happen more, to be honest, but I don't think this is a case of that. I just find this weird. Like, this to me seems, this is why I'm wondering if it is a response to, putting up leaked footage, or giving, having a negative opinion of the demo. It seems a little bit weirder, because otherwise, why would you bother? Like, just send it out, man. Like, it's not going to help you by not sending it to Skill Up and VGC. Right?
Yeah. No, I agree. It's strange. And I don't think either possible explanation, whether it's like an inclusive thing where they selected the outlets they wanted to send it to, or an exclusionary thing where they selected the outlets it didn't, like, either way, it's, you're still creating, a handwritten menu of people that you want to taste your delicious, delicious food. How delicious it actually is remains to be seen.
It's one thing I always found funny, because when we, when we used to get the odd game through for review, they were, even though like they didn't send physical versions of games out, they would still occasionally be like, oh, sorry, we don't have any codes for you. And you'd be like, they're codes. Surely you have unlimited number of codes. And it's like, oh no, we've got, and you're like, it is bullshit, isn't it? It's like this weird control.
Robert Mugabe over here, just keep printing. Like, they have to have some value.
Well, I think it's different cases though, right? If you are reaching out to a PR agency, they probably do have limited codes. But if you're reaching out to the publishers themselves, then yeah, just fucking get more codes, dill holes.
Yeah, I remember occasions when we would be like, we need more codes for this, and they'd be like, yeah, right. There's like 5 codes. And you're like, oh, shit.
Yeah. And there's been other times where it's like, oh, we can only offer you Xbox because that's all we've got left. And we're like, okay.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, that's weird. But it's a code. Surely they're unlimited.
Or like, we've run out of like the deluxe version of the game. We can only give you the regular version of the game and stuff like that. But yeah, like Josie said, I can think of an example within the last I'd say within the last 6 to 9 months of someone who we know that went to I think someone who worked at the studio. They weren't a member of like a PR company or a middleman, and they said, how many codes do you want? And I think it was either 7 or 9, and the person was like, yeah, cool, they're on their way.
Yeah.
On the basis that like it was probably considered like good publicity, and like, hey, these are 9 better homes in terms of, you know, getting the message out there as from a PR perspective than, with all due respect, some, you know, 3-man podcast with 5,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Oh, we would never get a look in. I don't know, like, yeah, Jesus Christ, we're not getting anywhere. But when we obviously had a little bit more when we had a bit more clout when we had all-time gaming. Like, still not amazing, but not bad.
The grand scheme of things, like we had.
We had some cool shit with all-time gaming, and it felt like at one point
we did
that we were just started ramping up.
Yeah, bro, we were flown to other countries on like on days-long trips to preview video games, like completely on other people's expenses. Like,
it still blows my mind, man. Like some
good
of that
opportunities
stuff.
back in the day.
Yeah.
Good, at least got the memories, right, gang?
Take a look at us now.
I'm still blown away by Totally Game. See, pre you boys, we got sent so much shit. Like, no, because it didn't make any sense. We had barely any subscribers, but it was so early in those days that they sent us everything. They sent us like PlayStations, Wii's, like Nintendo's, anything you could want. They were like, here you go, copies of games, here you go. And I was always like, I don't understand this, man. Why are these big companies sending us shit? And it's just the time. It was just the time. It was the fucking Wild West.
But it also goes the other way, right? Like now, like I'm sure people still send like Jinx TV fucking codes and stuff, and like, where the fuck's Jinx TV? I'm sure like there's some fucking defunct email for Machinima that's getting codes, just fucking, you know, like the family died and you go back to the house to like clear out, and there's just like a pile of mail. It's like, stop sending me stuff. It's dead.
Has to be. Oh, like every 2 days, like you see a tweet from someone who works in like PR or marketing or community management who's like, send me your emails or let me know who you are. I'm building the list. It's like so many people have built so many lists that Chris is absolutely right. At some point, like, yeah, it's just going to be, like links and codes going to who knows where. But look, let's put a bow on Forspoken in the most cliche way possible. I'm going to invite you both to let me know your Metacritic predictions for Forspoken, and caveat, at the end of the first week of release, not launch day.
Oh, are we including review bombing?
No, I'm going to go with critic score on Metacritic, which presumably will not include any review bombing. It might. Fucking hell, it'd be. Yeah, we got a news story for next week's podcast if it does.
Can I give you a small range? Is that all right?
Yeah, I'd accept a range.
All
yeah,
right. I'm saying 72 to 74.
That's a tight enough range that I'll accept that as an answer. Yeah.
I'm gonna go 69.
Of course you are, Jonesy.
Yeah,
loves a bit of 69, right, Jonesy?
But I still think with Forspoken, I still think it's gonna find its audience. So I don't think it will do necessarily that well with the critics. I think it will get quite low. I think like 69. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if inside of like, you know, the first year, it's got a core of people who love the shit out of that game.
Yeah, we were talking about it before we hit record on the podcast, but like, if Sonic Origins can find a fucking audience, like, you know,
but I think that's the weird thing about it. But then, as long as games aren't shit, they're going to find an audience, I guess. But I'm not trying to say that it's going to be shit. I'm just sort of, because there are some games which are crap and just trash, and they shouldn't find an audience, and they don't, and it's a good thing. But there are some where you're like, okay, it's not for me, but I'm glad it's found its audience.
Yeah.
Like
honestly, I think Forspoken will be fine. Like, I don't think anything's going to be massively like off-putting about it. I think it'll be fine. I think people will either like it or they won't like it, but it's not going to be like any kind of visceral behavior unless it is part of a review bombing kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I would agree with Chris. I don't think there's anything that's going to be like viscerally bad enough to cause it to be a car crash. I think people are going to be rubbed up.
It's the vanilla ice cream of gaming. It looks like to me.
I think there are going to be elements of it that are controversial. Like we talked a lot through Horizon and God of War last year about talkative characters and like people who don't know when to shut their mouths in games. I think there's going to be a lot of that in Forspoken.
But they got a slider.
Do they have a verbosity slider?
Yeah, I think they do. Wasn't that
Yeah,
the
you
thing that came
can
out of the demo?
not.
Oh,
I don't think it was a slider, but
was
you
it on the
can turn it
bangles
down.
or on the bracelet things? You can. All I know is I've seen some excerpts from. I don't know if they're cutscenes or in-engine
just like
dialogue
dialogue.
sequences,
Yeah.
and it's just like. Hey, it turns out that trailer might not have been like a one-off in terms of like really awkward Joss Whedon-inspired dialogue that is flooded in Forspoken. But we'll see. It's a PS5 game, like it's not cross-gen, so people are gonna have their eyes on it for that reason. It's also going to be one for the Sony ponies and the PlayStation fans to scream from the rooftops about, because it's obviously not coming to Xbox in any way. But we'll see. I don't know. I think the range between the two of you, like if Jonesy's low was 69 and Chris's high was 73,
74.
I think it could land between them there. And if it goes above, then fair play.
Yeah,
I kind of find it's coming out at a weird time. Like you got a game, not many games come out with like magic in that kind of sense and feel like the demo had. Like almost you're casting spells and you're doing this, and then like 2 weeks later. You've got Hogwarts coming out. It's like a bit of a. So that's a bit.
Hogwarts
of a weird one for me.
Hogwarts is quite a lot later, isn't it?
It's February 20.
End of Feb.
20.
So it's like a whole month.
End of
Oh
Feb.
Jesus! No, it's not even end
thought
of Feb. It's 10th of Feb.
10th of Feb.
Okay, yeah,
What is
that
going on
very
this year?
close.
This year,
It's literally like
mental.
2 weeks. It's
You know what is
3 weeks.
hysterical
3 weeks.
about that is literally last week we were sat here going through all the release dates.
Because like Dead Space was I mentioned it earlier. Dead Space was another one that was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And then Chris, you and I were talking about well, I guess we have to call it Like a Dragon now because they dropped the Yakuza game entirely. But like,
Like a Dragon Ishin.
Yeah, shit is happening.
Redfall, 3 days. I keep on seeing the tweets.
I think that's 3 days until that like showcasey live streamy thing that they're a part of. Not until release.
Shit. Okay, yeah.
I
don't know.
believe.
Like I said, it's on my Twitter timeline and it just says 3 days Redfall. I'm like, oh god, I guess that game's coming up.
Redfall. It doesn't have a release date. I'm sure it will get one in 3 days, and I'm sure it'll be closer than we're comfortable with. So you are still right in that sense.
Hey, but like even Redfall, like sorry to diverge here, but even Redfall, man, like us sinking our teeth into another co-op game, like that we can maybe actually all of us play. Like, yeah,
absolutely. Game Pass.
Go for it.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like, so it is the dream. And speaking of dreams, we are living the dream right now by recording this podcast. And the thing that enables us to continue living said dream is the support of all the fine folks who have headed over to patreon.com/SuperShow and supported us as we continue to venture forth into the weary, wide, scary, often world of video game podcasting. So a huge shout out and a huge thank you to everyone that has gone over there, everyone that has contributed in whatever way, shape or form. It really does mean a lot, and it is the thing that enables us to keep going through rain and shine. There are some names on screen now. Thank you all thank you to you all so much. I'm also going to give some shout outs to Aaron Cameron, Athletic Gravy, Brimstone, Cole K, Crow's Perch, Davnat Coburn, Ice Snort Rock Salt, Jesper Cam, Dal Nielsen, Leo Merger, Mindful Pig, Mr. Anthropic, Pastors Guild, and the big dogs, the directors or the members of the board or the head honchos and all of the above, Brett Z, aka Shell Shock, Doppler, Geometric Potter, Hacksaw Bookread, Manuel Guerrero, Peaswad, and that's, I don't know why I went like Peaswad, like there's a name after Peaswad. That's not. That's the end of that list. That's just an intonation error on my part, and I'm sorry about that.
Wow.
No,
okay.
seriously, thank you. As
The
someone
Empire
who
Strikes
is,
Back.
The Empire Strikes Back, Pirates of the Caribbean, and as someone who is filing taxes and paying said taxes as we speak, I both love and hate you all ever so much. But thank you.
Every time I hear Jamie do like read out stuff like that, I just want him to be a late night like talk show DJ. I would love that so
I
much.
fuck up too much.
No, you ace it, mate. I'd driving home from anywhere. I just want it to be dark out, a little bit of rain.
Ice Road Trucker.
The heat's
there.
on. Not Ice Road Trucker. I like in a car, so I don't want the responsibility of driving a truck, and I want the heat on. It's nice and warm. I've just got myself. I've pulled over and maybe got myself a hot drink from somewhere.
I thought you said prostitute.
That
okay,
click,
yeah, sure.
that a warm limp wristy from the prostitute in the seat next to me, and that click on the radio as you turn the volume up, and Jamie's voice just comes on. He's like,
just some
So hang on,
smooth jazz in the
hello.
background. There's a musical bed.
You've
Welcome
decided to
back.
turn the volume up after the hand job has started, just to
during, yeah. Like I just want something to entertain me while she's limply.
To slip him
tussling.
into it, you know.
She doesn't enjoy her job, mate. To be fair,
Nah.
she's only there for the paycheck, and she's not getting paid that well. So.
I can't have those streams being crossed. That's like when, like, if I open up an incognito browser and watch porn and do my business, and then like close the window, and it reverts back to the other window I had open. It was like a YouTube video, and some dude sat there. And I'm like, oh god, wait, hang on, no. Like, I know I've already come, but like, give me a few seconds to cool off before I start seeing dudes' faces again.
Love it.
Like, I'm still kind of in the zone. Like, I'm still like the arms on the back.
Get
of
away
my-
from me!
Yeah, exactly.
Got Afterglow with fucking Logan Paul.
Yeah, like it is that like you don't want that post nut like clarity, that post nut euphoria to be disturbed by like a hairy gaming commentator or something like we are.
I
Like,
don't think you'd be talking about gaming though in this radio show. I think you'd be more like an LBC kind of
Taking
talk about
call-ins.
anything of the day. Yes, it's call-ins, and it'll be any topic of the day, and Jamie there just like throwing out some stuff.
Okay, yeah, I guess. But then like call-ins, I'm not like a big politics guy. Like who's that? James O'Brien.
James O'Brien.
Yeah.
James O'Brien. Like he just goes, oh yeah, no, oh yeah. Like
That's really good.
You nailed it.
That was a really good impression.
No,
of it.
that's my impression of James O'Brien.
you're
listening,
right, aren't you?
Listening
You're
to
right.
someone spread misinformation about Brexit. Yeah, oh yeah. And who's going to pay for that then, Jim? Oh, yeah. That's apparently that's all I ever see that guy do.
That's a really
like
good impression. Nice.
That's
I
like
like
a
That was
really
good. That was
regional joke. But like radios can be important devices. Devices for sharing hot, sexy vocal tones, devices for listening to music, or in post-apocalyptic North America, devices for getting back in touch with your long-lost brother, as one character did in a TV show that all three of us watched the debut episode of this week. Jonesy, because you're
What
the
a
person
segue.
that put it in a spreadsheet. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to invite you to kick off our discussion of the show which I'm talking about. Of course, The Last of Us, which debuted on HBO as a rip-roaring success this past week. 4.7 million viewers for its debut across TV and streaming. That's the third biggest TV launch for HBO ever.
That's mad.
Only usurped by House of the Dragon, which of course was a spin-off of the very popular Game of Thrones show, and Boardwalk Empire, but you have to go all the way back to 2010 for that. So for us people living in the modern era, it's a big deal, and it's a video game adaptation. That's cool. Jonesy, what did you think?
I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It actually wrote a really interesting line where it nailed like the feel of the game. In how, the setup and the environments and the characters and the sort of how it looked and how dank and drab and like dreary and all that feel from the first opening sort of hours of the game. And I think they absolutely nailed it. Yeah, really enjoyed it. I was definitely not sure on the characters going in. I was like, I wasn't sure on Pedro Pascal, I wasn't sure on Bella Ramsey. But when they sort of were on screen together, all fears were sort of completely put to one side, and I'm excited to see how they do. Some of the I'm still not. I think I'm still sort of umming and ahhing about what they're going to do with it going forward. Like I want to see where they're going to go. I want to see how they expand like the roster of characters. I want to see if they keep that up. But as is, I think they did a fantastic job.
Yeah. Chris, are you in agreement?
Yeah, 100%. I was just thinking there, like where Jonesy was saying, he wants to see how they expand things. And we know that they are going to expand some of the relationships and introduce a few characters that weren't in the game. But I just wonder, like, what do you guys think? Do you think that's necessary? Do you think that, like, I look at a game like the story of the game of The Last of Us, and I think to myself, like, it doesn't necessarily need more characters. It doesn't necessarily need stuff fleshed out. There's already a lot to kind of tread through. Obviously, they do want to make it into like a bit of a franchise and kind of like expand it out to multiple seasons. So I get the need for expanding things where they can, but I just don't necessarily think that they need to per se. But that aside, yeah, I absolutely loved it. As Jonesy said, just echoing what he said, like the the tone and feel of it, like really fucking, they nailed it. Some of the things where they did kind of diverge a little bit, absolutely fine. Like nothing seemed out of place or off-putting. It was all good. And yeah, I'm amazed at Bella Ramsey sounding exactly like I remember Ellie sounding in that game. Like spookily exactly the same in my mind. Probably isn't, but if you get like one of those YouTube videos, like side-by-side comparisons, probably way off. But to my mind, it's like, oh my God, she's fucking nailed it. Pedro Pascal, fucking great choice as an actor. More than that, I'm just glad that it's opening up this discourse on like good game stories. Obviously, one of the best regarded game stories, of course, is going to make good TV. And as long as you put it, and just goes to show, put it in the hands of people that actually care about it, and maybe you'll have a good product rather than a cynical cash grab and like, hey, gamers have money and we want to exploit them, I thought it was really cool. I'm really excited to see where they go. I had we were having lots of conversations on our WhatsApp group, right? And one of the questions I asked, you guys never answered, so I'm going to ask it now, put you under the spotlight. It was less of a question, more of a statement, I think, where I said, I wonder if this season doesn't follow the entirety of the story, like it doesn't wrap up the story of the first game in this first season.
I think it will, personally.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think this will end in the exact same way that The Last of Us ends, but I think parts of the last and second to last episode will be used to flashback to the Left Behind DLC, or like the stories from within the Left Behind DLC, as well as some other bits that aren't in the game at all, just because of like what we know about who certain performers have been cast as. Ashley Johnson, for one, when you know who her character is in the show, not the game, then you're like, oh, well, that's theoretically, to my knowledge at least, entirely new. But I think it will wrap up where the first Last of Us wraps up. Okay. What I will say is I think there will be twists that are not there to like just fuck with gamers, but they're because they've like reached a different. Like I heard one person theorize that, and this is a fan theory, so it's not a spoiler. But if you don't even want to hear a fan theory, skip forward 30 seconds. But like I heard one people say like, oh, what if the reason Bill and Frank are being talked about as a duo is because in the TV show they kill Frank and they kill Bill and not Frank. Like, what if they reverse it and like it's
and then Bill's still around?
Yeah, the other way around.
Oh right, yeah.
And I was like, oh, I don't know how I'd feel about that, but I guess that it would make me think, which isn't a bad thing. I don't know. Yeah. I think there'll be a few moments like that, is what I'm saying. But otherwise, it will be ending the same way that first
I just want to go on the record saying that I think the season's going to end where Joel gets injured. And then season 2 is going to start up with Ellie foraging, killing rabbits.
Man, that would be such a bummer having to wait like another year.
Yeah, I know.
Rest of that story.
But
I don't want them to do that.
I just had this feeling though,
that'd suck.
But who knows?
Yeah,
I think Jamie's right. I think game 1 will be season 1. I think there will be diversions, and I think they need it because you're gonna, I think it's like an hour and a half every episode. It's like 9 episodes, and so that is a lot to cover. It's a lot of time.
The next episode,
with no game,
I believe, is 55 minutes, and then the episode after that is again over an hour. Like quite substantially, I believe they released those times. So it's interesting that they're kind of like wavering.
Yeah, no, I suppose because they want to get the story they want to get in each episode, which makes sense. Because if you think there's no gameplay, so if you've got to boil that story down to the cutscenes effectively, and then you've got to dramatize it, I do think they need more. And it's also that you need more in the sense because you can't build the character arcs in the gameplay like you can in the game. You need that to happen in cutscenes and stuff. So, for example, one thing that happened, which I wasn't sure about when I first saw it, but where where Sarah goes off and like gets Joel's watch fixed and things, which obviously doesn't happen in the game. You needed all of that because you had to kind of get. Because at first, when she was first on the screen, I was a bit like, she's a lot older than I thought Sarah was. I think this is going to be is this going to be a different sort of relationship? Is it going to feel different? And that actress had a lot of heavy lifting to do, which I think I said to you guys in the WhatsApp group, to get you giving a shit enough about her in a short space of time. in order for that to be an impactful scene. Whereas in the game, obviously, you have that because you're playing as Joel and you feel like you have a connection to Sarah. And I think they did such a good job of building that kind of like, especially by having her as the focus. Because then it's like, holy shit. Like, I would love to have seen people's reactions to that scene having
like
never
not
played
known,
the game.
Yeah. That would have been cool.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think for me, that kind of loops back around to, like, Chris, you were talking about the Discord that's been reignited about The Last of Us, and there's lots of back and forth and argument over, you know, that kind of, in inverted commas, title of, like, what is the best story in games? And, like, for me, The Last of Us was never about it being the best story in games, because I think, like, the A to B, if you were to kind of, like, be reductive about it, is not that exciting. It's not that crazy.
Yeah.
But like for me, The Last of Us was always like one of the best realized stories in games in terms of the characters and the arcs that they went on and the way they were brought to life and the slightly more sort of like mature and grounded approach that that game took to its storytelling and the relationships it allowed to develop between characters. And that made all those sort of those meaningful scenes as between, you know, whether we talk about Bill and Frank or Henry and Sam or whoever, like they all hit really hard in the way that I hope they do in the show. And that's why I'm totally cool with this show clawing a little bit more ground for itself to experiment with how it's going to realize its world. And like Chris said, there were additions they made here, like little tweaks, like, again, sorry, very minor spoilers here for anyone that hasn't seen the first episode of the show, but like the idea that rather than just presuming Tommy is, you know, still alive and at the dam with the fireflies or whatever, Joel did have some form of communication with Tommy that has now ceased, and like you get a little insight into that radio room that everyone, like tens of people, are queuing up for at once and spending ration cards, like desperately trying to get in touch with loved ones because, like, of course they would be in, you know, the United States that was quarantined into these major cities without much knowledge of what was going on outside them. Like things like that. If that's how they're going to flesh out the TV side of this world, like I'm all for it. Yeah. Some changes I'm less so, because I'm like, okay, you changed that, huh? Like, sure, okay.
Well, did you? I never thought that he was banging Tess.
That's an interesting one. Yeah, like it's never even super strongly implied.
No, they're just like contemporaries or mates.
They're very close contemporaries.
very close. But in the show, it's like, no, like the first meeting they have is like they're in bed together.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, no, they've got interesting angles.
Speaking of that scene, it's the same with like Joel is always a gruff, jaded dude, and you might presume that he has a relationship with drugs or alcohol, but you never see him like dangerously engaged with it in the way that we already have seen in the show. And like if drugs or alcohol become a crutch for him in the season, I'm like, I don't know if I needed that like addition. Like, oh, by the way, Joel's addicted to pills now. Like, oh,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just little things like, oh, they they fucking like weaved around our expectations because the car doesn't get jackknifed in the scene where they're driving through the town at the beginning, as it does in the game. What happens instead? A fucking like Boeing 747 explodes in the distance, and like a part of it hits the car in such a way that they skid off the road and everyone blacks out. And I was a bit like, just stick with the jackknifing, I guess.
There was one scene, it's actually, you guys, I'm sure you'll remember it really clearly, and it was the most video game scene in a TV show I've seen for a long time, which is where there's that bit you're talking about, Jamie, where the car, but then the other car, I think it's a cop car, then slams into their car. The whole thing bursts into flames.
Yeah, that's what separates them from Tommy, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and then it's like, what do we do? You go around. And I think I was watching it with my wife, and she was just like, why doesn't he just go around the car? Yeah. And I was like, I think it's perfectly positioned against the building as to create a wall of fire so they can't get around it.
It's like almost flush, right?
Yeah.
And then you get the chase sequence from the other perspective, and now we've gone like, I don't know, like the way that infected that chases them moves like wasn't. Do you know what it reminded me of? You know that Heavy Rain QuickTime event sequence where the person intentionally fails, and so the detective's like slipping over the tomatoes, and then it was like, what are you doing?
That was a little bit ridiculous. That was very much a kind of like, when the game, like in a game world, right? They want to create this tension, but they never want you to fail. So you could just walk, and this guy will be like,
But the thing is,
you.
I've done that sequence like 7 times, and I've never walked, and I never turn the camera around to see what's behind me because I'm always bricking it. I'm just like,
well, now
run,
you can
Joel,
try
run.
it. Now you can try it, Jamie, and see if it's true to if the show is true to the game in more ways than one.
I didn't like they cut a line. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, I could be misremembering. I thought the soldier says on the radio, "But sir, he's got a kid with him," which kind of builds this moral ambiguity in the soldier. And in this, that didn't happen. He's talking on the radio, and then he just shoots, which kind of made me think. I didn't like the fact they took that away from the soldier, the fact that he was morally torn in the game. I know I'm getting super pedantic now.
He does still question it, right? He's like,
what does he say?
He's like, are you sure? Or repeat or something.
No, he shoots. He shoots. Then he walks over to them. So he shoots, then walks over to them. And that's the point, I think, at which Joel says, no, don't, no. And then I think he then questions it. But he does shoot first, whereas I'm pretty sure in the game, he says immediately, like, but
no,
sir,
I think he gets given the order and he says, like, can you repeat that or something like that?
Yeah, there's a refrain, something like that he says like 3 times, and that's the thing. Because Joel, in both things, Joel realizes he's about to shoot before he shoots, which he turns enough to kill his daughter
just
and
kill
survive
himself. To hold her in the way of the bullet.
Yeah. But yeah, like, awesome to see a great video game being treated with such reverence, and like Chris said, no cynicism. A big, major TV like studio, big budget, big stars giving great performances, and I can't wait to see where it goes.
Can I ask a really super quick question? And you just give me a number if you want. What season does Abby come into?
2.
The Abby story. I think it's like season 4. I think there's like this season, which is the first game, 2 more seasons where there's like other shit going on, everything that happens in between. And then I think season 4 is like Abby's in season 4.
4, mate.
You think 2, Jamie?
I think 2.
So I have to say 3, or maybe the end of season 2, because I think that there'll be a split. But if there isn't a split, if this is just the first game, then yeah, season 2. But I reckon that Last of Us Part 2 could be the one that they could split into 2 or 3 seasons.
Agreed. That's something I will agree with Chris on.
Okay,
don't get me wrong. Like, even though I do think that there's a split, I do think that they could justifiably wrap up this season in 1. That, like, the story of the first game in 1. I prefer it if they do it in 2, just give it a little bit more breathing room. But if they, feasibly they could do it. But I think the other story, Last of Us Part 2, it's too dense. Like, there's too much going on, I feel.
Yeah.
Like, you could have a season for the whole fucking epilogue of the Last of Us Part. Like,
also, I think there's so much meat in between. I think between 1 and 2, there's so much meat in that world of them aging, of stuff happening.
I don't think they're going to use the show as an opportunity to explore story that is never explicitly covered in the games.
Yeah. I also think it makes it less impactful, Jonesy. Like, I think part of the impact of The Last of Us Part 2, whether you like it or not, part of the impact is those missing years, and you just don't know what the fuck happened.
Although, one thing I will say is if they do split The Last of Us Part 2 into 2 seasons, and like the midpoint is like the theatre scene, where everything's kind of then season 3 which is when like the story goes back in time and you see the other side of The Last of Us Part 2. Season 3 is at risk of being like one of the most review bombed seasons of television in the history of TV.
Yeah, no, they can't do. They need to just mix it from season 2, like.
Which, in some respects, The Last of Us Part 2 has a story that is like better suited to a weekly TV show than it is a video game. I've heard that, like that sentiment being shared out there, but
with the jumping between things. Yeah, imagine you go into season 2, and season 1 is from the one side, like episode 1 is from the one side, episode 2 is from the other side, or maybe like maybe not episode 1 and 2, but like let's say they get the crux of the stuff done in episodes 1 and 2, and then every episode's from there alternating. They alternate between which perspective they're looking at. That could be.
I can see them doing that.
Yep.
And then episode season 3, they're going to be called The Last of Us : Santa Barbara.
And it's the worst season, no.
Yeah, that was like the weirdest part of that whole thing for me. Like that did feel strange.
Yeah.
Like it works.
I look back on it really fondly, actually.
If I were Neil Druckmann, I'd be trying to find ways to make the Santa Barbara sequence seem like less of like an addendum.
Yeah, like out of nowhere.
Yeah.
More integrated, right? Yeah.
One thing that will be interesting to see is when we get there, whether it's in season 1, Chris, or in season 2, is how do they shoot the, and spoilers for the first Last of Us game here, but how do they shoot the hospital sequence, and do they put any real emphasis on the surgeon and who he is, and Joel explicitly killing him, and is it a known actor, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Like in the way The Last of Us Part 1, the re-release on PS5, they kind of had to retcon it to be like, oh, did you notice that it's Abby's dad now?
Okay, we won't get into it, but we did have a little bit of like a WhatsApp thing about how the politics of Last of Us. And one thing I think will be really interesting is how they handle, because they've kind of built the Fireflies up as at the moment of being, you know, the good guys in a fascist sort of state, blah, 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 blah. If they get to the point where they have to say, oh no, now Joel just murders all of them, that's going to be weird.
That's the whole point of the first game, is that Joel's the bad guy. We've had this on this podcast.
I mean, we made a 6 list out of it. Like, come on.
We have, but what I'm saying is we live in a different time. The world has changed in such a way. There are events that have happened since The Last of Us 1 came out, which I think reframe the entirety of it. And I don't know how the end of season 1 is going to go down in the world today. Do you know what I mean?
I don't think.
I'm really interested in the reactions of people who haven't never related to it,
Jonesy. I think at the end of the day, it's still a case of Joel is now attached to Ellie, and he's just saving his facsimile daughter, and that's the end of it.
Yeah,
like
I think
I'm interested to see how it gets.
I think it's going to be effective for the exact same reason it was in the game. Like a character that you've grown to know and love and sympathize for makes a decision that you don't agree with for the sake of a relationship that you are invested in at the loss of potentially the entire human race. Like that's what the game was. I think that's what the show will be. Whether the broader sort of like public reaction to it is different because of some like different political environment, I can't say, but
that's what I'm interested. I'll be interested to see when that final episode, if they just do it as as is. I'll be interested. What really piss me off? It'll piss me off if they do a TV film thing whereby they manage to do something to the Fireflies to make them seem like they deserve it, because that is a TV trope or a film trope to do. It's the boyfriend in the rom-com where they suddenly turn out that he's a piece of shit who is always at strip clubs and with prostitutes, and that's why his wife can cheat on him with the love interest. It's like this like the bullshit tropes they use. If they do that with the Fireflies, I'll be annoyed. I will be really.
But they kind of did that in the game though, didn't they? Like you had to search for it, but it was very much kind of like the fucking logs and all of that stuff. A little bit.
Well, like I think that the game also wanted you controlled Joel. Like the game almost wanted you to inhabit that person, like the character of someone who had grown so attached to an individual that the thought of their death would cause you to do something immoral. And like lots of people did kill more people in that surgery room than they needed to. And lots of people probably didn't feel that much, again, spoilers for the show and the game here, presumably. But so skip forward, I guess. But a lot of people probably didn't feel that much sympathy for Marlene, like at the end of that game, for example. Because that's the moral conflict that The Last of Us is meant to spark up within you, is that you also like care about Ellie and you also understand the complexity of that decision. And I think that's
I'm so excited about these.
Saying that's what creates the antagonist. Like it doesn't matter if the Fireflies make themselves antagonists. It's the scenario and the precarious position you're put in that forces you to almost identify the Fireflies as antagonists to justify your own decision, because of course you're morally cut up about it because you know you're in the wrong.
This is why I'm so happy that they decided to do it week by week and not let everyone binge it, because these conversations would already have been had, and it would have really annoyed me that it's almost like been and gone. I'm looking forward to that, that week by week. Oh my God, I can't believe this. Oh my God, I can't believe that.
It is the return of like event television, right?
Yeah, water-cooled TV, baby. And it continues at the time of recording tonight with episode 2 that I believe is called Infected, directed by the one and only Neil Druckmann. And who knows what's going to happen? but I think someone's going to die.
Oh.
Who? You'll have to watch and find out. Now, I would come up with a very clever segue to talk about a TV show all about death and desperation and broken moral compasses. But unfortunately, I think any clever segue would be well, I don't think I don't think it's appropriate. I think it would be inappropriate because unfortunately we are going to talk about layoffs that have been hitting the video games industry in the last week or so. In fact, over the last couple of weeks. It's January, so to a certain extent, you expect there to be some, uncertainty in the air. Yes, and the tech industry is always shifting and moving, and it seems to be always going through phases of over or under confidence and like over and under recruiting, and always trying to balance things out. And unfortunately, those balances often leave people in the crossfires, so to speak, and layoffs do happen. On the kind of video game coverage side of things, Fandom, who recently acquired GameSpot and Giant Bomb, among other sites, made a number of redundancies. I think it's a horrible way to group them together, but I feel like all the groups that begin with the word fandom, fanbyte, and fangamer, I think they were all hit in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
One of the more interesting stories, because of how the news has been handled and responded to by both the community and the people behind the decisions themselves, so we'll loop back around to it, is Microsoft-owned Halo developer 343 Industries, as first reported by, I think, like Jason Schreier, amongst some others, that they'd been hit hard. And we know that some significant figures within the studio, like creative director Joe Staten, have either left the company or have been redeployed to other parts of Xbox or other parts of Microsoft. But that's become an interesting one of the last couple of days, as 343 have kind of had to come out and push back against some of the rumors and speculation about their future, and interestingly, the future of Halo. Speaking of Halo, the Slipspace engine lead developer David Berger and 343 Industries co-founder Bonnie Ross have also departed. These were part of 10,000 layoffs that Microsoft made or planning to make before the end of March. And also on the gaming side, Bethesda have been hit, but it's unclear at the moment if that affects development of any of the titles they have coming up.
Don't you guys see, like,
Unity? It's widespread.
There's fucking loads, but don't you, like, you hear numbers like 10,000 employees, and I believe, like, wasn't it like 10,000 or 11,000 last year at Facebook got made redundant as well?
11,000, I think.
Yeah, and it's like, where are these people go? Like, that is like, those are cities of people. Like, where are they gonna go to? Like, that's mad. And I think
tell you what's really weird with this is, like, last year. Do you remember we were saying last year, like, the video, they were poaching people from other companies because it was so hard to get people.
Yeah,
that doesn't seem that long ago.
Yeah, it's kind of mad, man. But then also, like, with 343, it's sad, but at the same time, this is what fucking kills me, and it's so annoying, right? 343 have not had a great track record since their inception, okay? And what happens is, it's because of the people at the top, and then, I'm not going to say unionized, but the people at the bottom get fucking dragged for it, right? Like, the people that are just making the fucking game and doing their job perfectly or brilliantly, at some might say, but then because there's the lack of leadership or the wrong kind of leadership, and then those leaders, they just go, yeah, we'll just redeploy you to another fucking division, and everyone else gets fucking hung out to dry. It fucking drives me mad.
Yeah. Especially when, like, oftentimes nowadays, tweets about layoffs are accompanied by tweets about the bonuses or the compensation that was received by certain figures at the heads of these companies, often, unsurprisingly, in the tens of millions of dollars. And I think it was the Microsoft CEO, I forget his name.
Satya Nadella.
Yeah, I think he received, was it $50 million he received in, again, I can't remember what banner that 50 million came under and how it was delivered to him. But it is one of those things where you kind of extrapolate out and you just think, like, even if you said, hey, do you know what, this year I'll take 5. How many jobs does $45 million save? And don't get me wrong, I know that layoffs aren't about just like, let's extend the lives of these employees as long as we possibly can by squeezing every penny. It's about restructuring. It's about looking at the parts of the company you see a future in and the parts of the company you don't, and about like we have a far more brutal sort of almost like arguably a far more brutal term in this country where you get made redundant because they're seen as redundancies within the companies, like literally things and subsequently people that you don't need anymore. So I get it's not always that simple, but it's at the same time the optics of taking home multi-million-dollar bonuses while laying off thousands of people, pretty rough, right?
Yeah, it is tough. But then at the same time, it's like if the company's not working, right? And then, like, let's say the company's like let's take the Microsoft situation. It's too saggy in the mid section, and it can't be as athletic as it should be. And the board of directors are like, this company's too saggy. So then, surprise, surprise, the CEO says, okay, let's fucking make some changes. And they slim down, they restructure, and they make the company put it in its best position to go forward as successfully as possible. So the board's going to see that and they'll be like, you've done your job, here is your bonus. Right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. I think because one of the wheels here is efficiencies, right?
Yeah.
Is we need to make the company more efficient. And you're like, why do you need to make the company more efficient? It's because when the company was making stupid money, you were thinking, oh yeah, I'm amazing. This is great. I'll hire shitloads of people. And then you suddenly realize that when times were tighter and there wasn't as much money around, suddenly it's like, oh, we're not efficient in the lower ranks. It's like, no, you badly managed the company, you fucking idiot. Yeah. Like now you're just going to get rid of the people who do the work on the ground.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is like, while I completely agree with you, Jamie, that like the amount is absolutely ridiculous, I don't necessarily think that the CEO of a company like Microsoft necessarily, it's not like saying, oh, we'll just take a fucking cut like that. Like you're talking about like one of the 3 biggest, most successful companies in the entire world. Like, yeah, fine. That's a big job. That might deserve a big bonus. What grates me is kind of that middle management band. So you talk about like your creative director, 343, Joe Staten, or Bonnie Ross as the co-founder of 343. And then 343 as this division within Microsoft have been like almost leapfrogging from like fumble to fumble to fumble.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's almost a case of saying like, actually, those are the people that are most at fault, I would imagine. Satya Nadella is like, I've got all these divisions. I got to look after them. I got to streamline. I got to think of the board. I got to do this. You know, I'm sorry if I'm sounding like a bit of an apologist, but like, I think a lot of people's kind of anger gets misplaced sometimes.
I still think there's, maybe, don't get me wrong, maybe not in a company quite like Microsoft, given the sheer size of that company.
Yeah, Microsoft is such an unwieldy beast, right?
But I still think there's room for a slightly more like holistic and human-friendly approach and outlook on, you know, the financials and the way a company is run and the security you can afford your employees. And like one of the quotes that's doing the round at the moment on Twitter is from the late Nintendo CEO Satoru Iwata, who died, I don't even remember what, like 5, I don't know, maybe 10 years, I don't know how many years ago. And there's a quote from him saying like, I don't think there's a game developer in the world who would be able to make a game that people would want to buy while simultaneously fearing for their jobs. And he was a dude who 1 year, forget bonuses and stuff like that. He sacrificed his like wage, he sacrificed
salary,
his income
for the 3DS
as salary, to ensure that no like jobs were lost. And this isn't my way of trying to create some like level playing field and pointing fingers and say if he can do it, you can do it too, because companies are different and individuals are different. And I'm not suggesting that like everyone needs to make sacrifices because one person did, or that sacrifices of a similar nature in other places would have the positive impact you'd be looking for. Like Satya Nadella, like sacrificing some of his salary, like if it did save job, like it would. I'm not suggesting that that we're comparing apples to apples here, because I know we're not. But it is interesting, and it sucks, especially like I know we're talking at the moment about game studios, but like I'm a little bit more familiar with the Giant Bomb situation because I still keep tabs on their website. Long-term viewer, previously long-term premium subscriber. But, well, yeah, I haven't. Do you know what? I don't think I've ever I would be a first-time caller. But I know about their situation that they are still functionally a video web, like they produce videos. That's them.
Yeah.
They've got a podcast, but they produce videos. They were hit with redundancies and lost two. The only two people that were made redundant or let go were two of their 3 video editors. So they are a video team that just got sliced down to 1 editor and now has 4 personalities, 1 editor. And they're like, well, hang on, who thought? What?
But surprise! You see, this is exactly what I'm talking about. So it's that middle fucking management that have no fucking clue, no idea. Right? And that's what fucking annoys me.
I think the thing is, 2 things can be true at the same time. Like, we're saying that that they should have a more holistic approach. They shouldn't be able to get rid of as many people. But at the end of the day, like Microsoft, okay, so they're making 10,000 people redundant. They're losing 4% of their workforce. That's about almost $1 billion worth of wages a year.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way they can just reduce people's bonuses and then cover $1 billion.
Yeah, no,
but about the same time, that having been said, they shouldn't have ended up in the position whereby the industry had a downturn enough that they were that fucked. That they were like, do you know what? We need to save it. Like, you'd hope anyway. You'd hope that they were in a better position to weather the storm a bit longer.
But what's your take on the giant bomb thing then, Jonesy? Like a video, or let's just call them a content silo, okay? A company that is just creating content, and you get rid of 2/3 of the people that put that content together.
I think the reality of that, I'm going to guess, is that the content they're doing isn't making anywhere near enough money, and it's probably fine that it's almost like a last ditch attempt to salvage it, insofar as if you lose a personality, I would imagine that they're like, okay, we've lost a big name, we've lost a reason people come to this. If we lose 2 editors out of 3 editors, we save money and we can still produce content. I think it's a terrible situation for the team, but I wouldn't be surprised if that means that it's not too long before Giant Bomb starts saying hey, look, we are cutting even more, we're losing more stuff, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. Do you know what I mean?
But I think they're going to have to. It's like, why are you holding on to all these personalities when you can't generate enough content to showcase them?
Yeah.
And Giant Bomb's that weird one, because how long ago was it, Jamie? Not even 6 months ago, where a bunch of them departed.
Yeah.
So that was it was Gerstmann who quit. Well, Gerstmann was fired last summer, and 3 of the other most popular personalities quit the year before.
And they did next there, right?
Exactly. I personally think Giant Bomb. This is a horrible thing to say, but I think it's
it's done.
More or less, it's on life support.
Yeah,
and
I think the same thing.
And that's sad, but
we found that, I don't want to get too into that, but I think we found a similar thing in that companies operating this kind of thing just can't compete with popular people who do it for themselves, at home. You can't, a Skill Up who has 1 million subscribers and hundreds of thousands of views every week, you cannot compete with him if you are a company with 12 members of staff, 3 talent, 3 editors, you just can't.
Yeah.
He can produce content that people want to see because it's natural selection, right?
Yeah.
The people that
and
people want to see rise to the top.
Or 2 people if you need to get an editor. Yeah.
It's probably an editor. Yeah, him and an editor, maybe a researcher, I'm going to guess. And he's probably paying them, video to video. But in reality, if you've got a team of 12 people, 14 people that come from the older school internet days, you just cannot compete, man.
There was another interesting take, which I don't know if any of you saw it, but Andrea Renee from Kind of Funny Games, she was when all of this broke, she put out a series of relatively interesting tweets where saying hey, look at of course this is happening. Look at Kind of Funny Games. We are bankrolled by, I can't remember the numbers, but let's just say, I'm going to throw a number out there. We're bankrolled by 5% of our viewership. They said, in terms of Patreon payments and everything, only 5% of the people that consume our content pay for it. And they say, everyone expects content, but not many people expect to pay for it.
Yes.
And then you're almost saying oh yeah, but the platforms that you're on, like YouTube, etc., you'll get ad revenues. Yeah, but all it takes, you've seen what happened with YouTube in the past couple of weeks. They make a change, and all of a sudden, everyone's fucking catalog of work gets demonetized because there's one errant swear word in the first 30 seconds. Like, come on.
Yeah, I saw that stuff. Yeah.
And I never be down on it because I think it's amazing and it's something I never want to lose. But the other sort of wrinkle to this whole thing is if you're talking about, especially in the UK or Europe, places like that, if you're talking about a company, you have a whole load of responsibilities to employees. You're talking about amounts of time, what do you call it? Notice periods. You're talking about salaries. So no matter how much money you're making, you're still in the hole for however much. If you're almost creating your own content online, and you are subcontracting a freelancer that you pay as and when you need them. And we've all done this work for YouTubers. And we've all done this for so we've all experienced it where you have no idea how much they're going to pay you. You know, no idea how many videos they want to edit. That free form, gig economy style of thing it's a lot easier to weather a storm on YouTube of ad revenue and apocalypse than it is if you're a company that's handing out hundreds of thousands of pounds a year in salaries, and then you see half your revenue one year. You're just fuck, we got to get rid of a load of people. So it's not surprising. It's sad, man. I think it will decrease the quality of what's out there of content. You'll just end up with it'll all be reaction videos about people doing this.
Yeah.
About a new game.
Oh God, yeah.
Which is
the state of content, fellas. Jesus Christ.
Which is weird when you consider that there are now over estimates that there are now over 3 billion video gamers on the planet, and that number itself is 1 billion up from where we were a decade ago. And the video games industry generates more revenue than the film industry and the music industry combined, and yet here we are talking about how there may not be any room for an independent press that covers video games on the internet.
I just wanted to, one thing I saw, it's not video game specific, but I just wanted to mention because I heard it and I was genuine that's insanity. And I don't think you could do it in this country, for example, is Google are making 12,000 redundancies, right? They're getting rid of 12,000 people. And apparently, I think it was at their New York office, the way that people found out whether they kept their jobs or not, and this is last week, they turned up to the office, they swiped their card to get in, and if the machine went green and opened the door, you had your job, and if the machine went red, that was your notice that you just lost your job.
That's big David Brent energy right there.
Yeah. David Brent would never do that. That is some fucked up tech company, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg bullshit right there.
Hang on, David Brent were prepared to announce that his team would suffer redundancies and that he was getting a promotion at the same time as I've got some good news and some bad news.
No, but he told them. He said it.
To which he was directed to say, there is no good news, David. It's just bad news and irrelevant news. And he goes, that's not a saying, is it? Got some bad news and some irrelevant news.
But he said it to them, which is the only difference. I'm saying that at least he didn't just lock the door and then they turned up.
No, he doesn't. But he doesn't, because he does the thing where he's pointing.
He goes, you keep your job.
You're not going to lose your job. And then he skips over them. You're not going to lose your job.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
It's big David Brent energy.
Let's set that as a low bar for the video games industry and video games adjacent industries. Be better than Brent.
Better than Brent. We should get that.
Or be better
trending.
Than Scott, I guess, if you don't know what we're talking about. That's it, Michael Scott?
Michael Scott, yeah.
Yeah, Michael Scott,
there you go. Oh, speaking of David Brent-like behaviour, let's put a bow... Speaking of companies apparently run by clap, no, I'm joking. Let's put a bow on this podcast by talking about a game that we have talked about many
Our favourite
times.
game, mate. Come on now.
On this very show. And appropriately, as we put a bow on this podcast, they are putting a bow on their entire fucking video game. That's right. Crystal Dynamics' Marvel's Avengers, as published by Square Enix, will cease to be supported this year. There are 2 dates to note. One is March 31st, which is when we're going to get the game's final update, and all cosmetic items and things like that will be made free in the store, and you'll be able to get your hands on anything you want. The second date of note is September 30th, 2023, which is when all official support for the game will end. There will be no more updates and patches and fixes or anything like that, although it will still be possible to buy the game, to play the game solo or multiplayer. It seems like most of the content will remain intact, but gents, as we have
hold on, wasn't it that after September 30th you wouldn't be able to buy the game even?
I was under the impression that you could.
You will be able to buy it, but I don't think you'll be able to buy it from like PlayStation.
Yeah,
or,
like you could buy physical
Xbox.
copies, but you couldn't.
I thought they were just saying
version.
I thought they were just saying like, oh, we're just not going to make any new content.
No, I read something that said, I read something that was like it's being delisted.
That's pretty significant.
I will check because I do have a
well, Jonesy. I mean, we've joked about this for a long time, Chris, right? And it's kind of like a weird feeling to see it finally happen because on the one hand, yeah, of course, but on the other hand, like what a waste of a talented developer's time for that many years that this never turned into anything.
I mean, you say talented developer. Did you? I mean, you played the game.
Yeah, I don't think that's fair, man. I also played Tomb Raider and Rise of the Tomb Raider, and they were great. Like Chris, I also played hey, this is. Do you want to know why we haven't had a Soul Reaver game for however many years? Because of Marvel's Avengers. Obviously, that's not a like for like thing. But I'm like, Crystal Dynamics could have been doing better work over the last 3.
I mean, they also could have been making a better Marvel's Avengers game. But there you go.
Well, yeah, and that's partly on them and partly on probably Square Enix and also apparently partly on Marvel. It just sounded like this was a relationship that was never going to work.
Yeah, although I said it right. Like, I'm surprised that they lasted this long because I honestly thought as soon as they were done with the Spider-Man thing that they would have packed it up.
I can clarify for you on the can you buy it thing. So this is from Crystal Dynamics FAQ, and they have said that you will still be able to buy the game digitally up until September 30th, 2023, at which point you will not be able to buy it digitally anymore. You will still be able to buy physical copies while stocks last.
Yeah.
But after September 30th, the game will effectively, you'll struggle to buy it. Like it's going to go. It's going to be difficult to get.
And how long
digitally impossible.
How long until they switch off the servers, I reckon?
So they haven't said. They've said that they're doing stuff to the game to make it so that people who want to play it can continue to play it, multiplayer and solo player online after 30th September. But because there'll be no more support for it, if PlayStation do an update and then the game doesn't work with that update or whatever system you're playing on doesn't work, then it's going to be fucked. So it's just a matter of time, really. One thing I don't agree with on the badly made game, I do think there was some love went into the production of some elements of this game. Like I genuinely think they did some good stuff with like some animation stuff and how some of the characters work. But the game in total, it's like when you put all the parts together, it was a shit game. Yeah, that was the problem, I think.
Yeah, could say the same thing about Anthem, right? Like it had its moments.
Yeah, true. Yeah, true.
It was like Anthem in a weird way. It was misjudged, and it was a bad pairing of developer, publisher, IP and idea all wrapped up with questionable execution, which itself was probably down to like issues like time frame and budget and so on and so forth. It's one of those things that with hindsight, like Marvel's Avengers never should have been a games as a service Destiny clone. And like I think they would have been far better off like looking at the examples set by other games that have come out in similar time frames, like Insomniac Spider-Man, and just be like, do right by the characters and make a good game. And they did right by some characters, and they made an okay game in some respects, but it was confused and it was messy, and it was inconsistent, and
it was also a demo.
Multiple, I think.
I do think though, like if you have a copy of this game, get on after the March 31st, get on in April, hop on, and you might as well have a blast and just download every like cosmetic, everything available in the game, because everything's going to go absolutely free. You might as well just jump on and like play around with what was available and see if there's anything there just to like give you a few hours of entertainment, because it's going to be dying. It won't be very long. So they're making everything free, so why the hell not?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, it is on both Game Pass and PlayStation Plus Extra or Premium. I can't remember which, like that middle tier. So if you wanted to sign up for a subscription service for 1 month to attend the funeral of Marvel's Avengers, then you can do that.
Well, I've actually said that I think we should jump on and play on the on the last day.
I would like to.
That'd be maybe cool. September 30th. We should or the 29th. We should hop on and then give it a blast.
I'm down for that. I reckon this would be a prime thing for Microsoft to swoop in and buy it and just be like, you know what? All we'll do is support it to make sure it just never breaks. And there's our fucking Game Pass title. Like, boom, done, easy.
But why? What's the point?
Cheap as chips, because it's content, right? Like it's a game, and it's a game as a service that they could just continue, and it's another feather in their hat, and why not?
I don't know if it's worth it.
Could you? How much? I genuinely. How much would it be to buy? I would wonder. Imagine if it was that cheap. Like we could
it's still a whip around, right? And
yeah, we could. Yeah, we'll get a Patreon thing going up. Let's buy Marvel's Avengers.
Go fund me. We're gonna buy Marvel Avengers.
This was my plan all along, because you guys. I am sure you don't remember. I bought every Funko Pop for every character in the Marvel's Avengers game.
That was a great investment.
It was, because I thought it was going to die on its arse. No one would like it. No one would buy the Funko Pops, which means they'll be rarer. And then when I'm older, there will be few out there, which means that I will have, people go, oh yeah, that shit game that came out in the, in the end of the 2010s, like, those Funko. Well, I can't believe you've got those Funko Pops.
Yeah, but
fingers crossed for 2050, mate.
There are certain things where that comes good. Like, I know that there's a weird market for baseball cards in the States, but like there are also now people who have like Beanie Babies or Furbies that take up an entire room in their house, and it's like,
yeah,
congratulations, you look like a fucking lunatic.
You got a Furby room.
You got a Furby room, and like
I think I have 7 Funko Pops, and 5 of them I think are Marvel's Avengers, and one of them is the Titanfall. I've got BT. And,
that's the only acceptable Funko Pop that a grown adult could own.
I bought it for like 20 quid. It's worth like 180 quid now. It's ridiculous. Nice. My kids would like to play with it, and I always tell them no, because they like to
smack their hands away. How dare you? I got nothing against Funko Pops. They're fun, is what they are. But
they are fun.
Yeah,
they're fun.
Maybe not the Marvel's Avengers ones, Jonesy.
No, they were cool, man. I don't mind them. I had a lot of love for what they wanted to do with the Marvel's Avengers game. It's just a shame they didn't do it.
Yeah. No, I can agree with that. And I'd like to say that it's a lesson learned for all involved, but I'm sure there are going to be plenty more stories in years to come about unfortunate happenings and unfortunate developments with mismatched IPs and genres and developers and publishers and all the nonsense that went into creating Marvel's Avengers and making it everything it is, and soon to be everything it was, as Marvel's Avengers bids us farewell on September 30th, 2023. And now, gents, unless either of you two have anything further to add, we will bid our farewell to the fine listeners and viewers of this podcast.
I have a question. A closing thought. I would be interested to hear from the people who will check this out on YouTube or on other platforms, if you can be bothered to go to YouTube or tweet us. What dead or dying IP would they like to buy? If they could, like we were just saying about Marvel's Avengers, the game.
But then Marvel's Avengers wouldn't count as a dying or dead IP, though, right?
No, but I'm going to open it. Okay, I'm going to open it out. So like a dead or dying IP, or it could be a game, like a dead game that you could buy the rights to the game, so you literally own the license to make that game. What would it be?
Could we get some? I'm sorry, fellas. I know we're just dragging this out, and Jamie just wants to get off. Maybe because he's got a bun in the oven brewing. He was drop the kids off at the school.
Hey, I'll tell you, I'm more than happy to chat. I don't.
Okay, cool. Just baseline? What would you guys go for?
A lot of things
IP's easy for me. Blockbuster.
The Blockbuster IP.
But we're just
I want to own Blockbuster.
But what would you do with it?
The logo. I want the logo and I want the name.
But you didn't answer my question.
What would I do, mate? I'd rent out. I'd hire out. No, I wouldn't really hire out videos. I have a dream to open a restaurant called Blockbuster Video, and you go into the restaurant, and instead of like booking a table or a booth, you get given you book like a table that's a theme. I think that'd be really fun, because so much of my childhood in the States and in the UK is linked to Blockbuster. Is linked to like hiring the Super Nintendo and from Blockbuster. And every time I'd go and see my grandparents in the States, we'd go to Blockbuster. The first thing we did and hire a Super Nintendo, and then me and my brother would play that like all summer. Or it'd be in the UK, it was like Friday nights, my mum and my dad would like take us to Blockbuster, and we'd hire a game and a video and like get a bag of popcorn. And it's so much of my childhood is linked to that.
I thought you were talking about like games though, like
No, adjacent. So for me, that's adjacent. So I have a lot of I have a lot of fond memories of video games tied to.
Okay, but if it was a game there, Jonesy, like a defunct game or something.
Oh, that's tough, man.
Well, while you think of it, what about you, Jamie?
A lot of the things that come into my head, like really early on, are stupid because, like, I don't know, I get fixated on dumb things. Like when I first went, like not super retro, but like kind of retro for me. Like the ideas that popped into my head were things like Gex the Gecko, which I don't think should come back in any way, shape, or form. Earthworm Jim that could, but you need like a really good idea.
Earthworm Jim could be sick, yeah.
Yeah, there were things that sort of like died while I was growing up that I have like fond memories of that we've talked about in this podcast before, like Mercenaries, Army of Two, Kane and Lynch, State of Emergency. Like just random little things like that like I don't know what the fuck I'd do with them, but those were the things that like ended up being either one-offs or one or two games and then like very much dying. That
So what we're saying is we are the new Embracer group, and we're going to buy all these old IPs and resurrect them. I would love to bring back Golden Sun.
Okay, that's a fair shout. That's probably the most like reasonable shout we've come up with.
Yeah, I mean, there's others. Like obviously. It's hard though because you don't know what's still like secretly in development. Like say, a new Dino Crisis, but yeah, like that. Right, there might be one in development.
There's supposedly. I always forget where it's at, but supposedly there's a Time Splitters like somewhere in existence.
Game wise, I'd go G Police. I loved that when I was. It's such a good idea and like set up. I fucking loved it as a kid. So yeah, mate, I'd go G Police. They could do an amazing current gen version of G Police. Great.
No. Well, there you go.
I'd like to email Rockstar and find out for sure if Bully is dead or alive. Yeah, and then get my hands on Bully if I can.
Ping pong.
Anyway,
table tennis. Rockstar table tennis.
Rockstar. Chris Joanides presents table tennis. That's the title I would play.
Oh yeah. Just got to get that bald head. Cool.
Yeah. Well, that's something that you guys can chime in, like Jonesy said, either in the comment section if you're watching us here on YouTube, or if you're listening on a podcasting platform, you can join in the conversation on social media. Our handle on Twitter is @SuperShowPod if you'd like to tag us and let us know your thoughts. But beyond that, thank you all once again for listening or watching to this episode. Thank you for considering supporting us on patreon.com/SuperShow. And with that, we will see you same place, same time next week for more video game action. Bye.
See ya.